Medium shot,
medium. هاي الجوة طالعة متابع الجوة اللوجو
What would you have to That's why it's
okay, I'll do that. Okay, no problem.
I think it was pure chance.
Right now. Cheers, bye. Bye-bye.
We had like some sherry flavour, like little
Ja, kijk, als die teksten die came through in your
Probably because they see lots of like this is exciting, groundbreaking. I asked
موت على كل من واحد يبي يجاوب سوي عليه المصحفين ما تطلعهم ما تسوي ستوب الريكوردينج لحد ما هم dat is meer een achterschermentaal vanuit nu wel gebrand.
They're helping. They're helping as well.
Was niet heel moeilijk. Nee. Ja, conferentie zoals dit. Conferentie hebben we ook gedaan, daar waren wat foto's en
Nou precies, dan wordt het gewoon geplaatst. Heel veel mensen zijn die ja, dat wordt ook.
Ik heb stuur hem nu aan.
Do
you need these declarations?
I'm really sorry. We are doing live
Yes.
now. If you don't mind, it's really, I have a problem connecting. Whenever it touches, it's already.
Sorry, what do you mean? What? No, we just live streaming the whole.
Yeah.
Nou, bruin zijn zo.
Alex, that's all the way to town hall for that. I smell an AP bag coming. There's no AP bag.
I don't know any
Lisa? Lisa? Achterkant tegen de straat lopen. Wijs je heen. En staat links. En dan. Hier, nee, maar hier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon. Welcome to this press conference. First, we have introductions by the four speakers. Then there is a possibility for a few questions. Minister, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, let me thank our co-hosts and all the participants for their invaluable contributions to this conference. I'm truly impressed by your dedication. Ukraine has asked the Netherlands to be the lead nation on restoring justice, point 7 of Zelensky's peace plan. And since the outset, we have been more than willing to take on that role. We aim to be a reliable partner for Ukraine on the long road to justice and accountability, a road we have started together and that we want to finish together. The start of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine left tens of thousands dead and injured, and millions more displaced. Over 100,000 alleged international crimes have been documented so far, more than 200,000 homes, almost 4,000 schools, and some 400 hospitals either lie in ruins or are badly damaged. Not to mention the intangible, undocumented damage inflicted on the lives of the Ukrainian people. And everyone here agrees. Russia must be held accountable. Russia must pay for these appalling violations. And we must support Ukraine and the ICC in achieving these goals, even though their justice system is at risk of collapsing under the weight of these atrocities. Ukraine remains determined in the pursuit of justice and accountability, and so do we. We are prepared to take all steps necessary to ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice, if necessary at the international level, and all steps necessary to ensure that the crime of aggression is addressed by a special tribunal, and that Russia pays for the damage it has inflicted. Let me mention some of those steps. Today, the first compensation claims have been submitted to the Register of Damage for Ukraine, more than 100 today already. Less than 18 months ago, this was just an idea. As of today, the register is fully operational. The register is the first step towards a fully fledged compensation mechanism which will have the power to deny or grant registered claims. The Netherlands is willing to host this compensation mechanism under certain conditions. The conference provided political guidance on the discussion of the next step in this process, a claims commission. We will also be discussing whether, and if so how, we can use frozen Russian assets, or at least their proceeds, to support Ukraine in its self-defense, in its reconstruction efforts, and to compensate Russia's victims. Additionally, the Netherlands allocates 10 million euros this year to support the investigation and prosecution efforts of Ukraine. Impunity thrives on silence. Today we have spoken up. We have said in a single, clear, loud voice, we don't accept impunity. Not in Ukraine, nor anywhere else. We will continue to use that voice for as long as it takes, until there is peace and justice for Ukraine and for its people. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, Hanke, Didier, for co-organizing this conference. I'm grateful to the Netherlands and to the European Commission for this consistent and continued effort, and most importantly, a result-oriented effort. There is no more important historical process in modern Europe than ensuring that Russia is held accountable for its crimes. Think of just one fact. Russia is the only empire in the world that avoided decolonization in the aftermath of 2 world wars in the 20th century. All other empires ceased to exist and were forced to let their colonies free. They also apologized for crimes they had committed throughout history. Russia is the only empire that not only survived to this day in a new form of the Federation, but has also never, and I emphasize, never admitted any guilt for its crimes committed in different territories and conflicts, nor has been publicly punished for them. It just doesn't have a culture of accountability. And it is our joint mission to put an end to the era of Russian impunity. This is the mission that we pursue. We must hold the last empire to account in order to secure a future free of war for our continent. Otherwise, Russia will continue its war of conquest and subsequent unspeakable atrocities. In my remarks today at the opening of the conference, I emphasized that Ukrainians do not want to hear that justice will be served. They want to see it served already. And they have a full right to demand this. And I would like to thank all participants of this conference for compassion and understanding of this will of the Ukrainian people. I'm glad to say that today's conference has brought exactly the type of tangible outcomes that Ukrainians expect. First and foremost, the register of damage is now operational. Ukrainians can already file their applications to request compensation for damage or destruction of residential property. We will welcome further expansion of the register's scope of available types of requests. And actually, I was told, and Hanke confirmed, that hundreds of applications have already been sent. I think it's a sign of how high the demand is, but it's also a sign of how thirsty people are for justice. I visited the register's newly established office today here in The Hague. It has a lot of space for many employees and active work. As an international organization, the register will take all of these requests of Ukrainians from now on and process them. It will be in charge of providing compensations. The conference also concluded with a document, a political declaration signed by 44 countries, and I would like to emphasize, open for further signatures. I think it's also important to mention that the composition of this conference was not entirely European, that we had representatives of other regions of the world. The declaration that we have adopted today supports, among other things, the discussion on confiscation of frozen Russian assets as well as proceeds of them for the benefit of Ukraine. First, decisions to use frozen Russian assets for Ukraine's benefit have already been made, and this work must achieve more results this year. We also had a discussion on the margins of the conference, a discussion on the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression, and I'm glad to register here today an overwhelming support for the creation of the tribunal, for the need to finalize this work, which we are keen to do after resolving the outstanding issues. Finally, I would like to highlight the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression, so-called ICPA. It is already actively working, and its prosecutors are currently investigating and preparing indictments for this crime. So we have the prosecution, but we need to set up a place where prosecutors can deliver their indictment and fight for fair judgment. A lot of work remains to be done, but today we can mark all the work that has been done and the work that delivered all these results. It would not be possible to achieve it without, not only without the unity of all participants, but also without the leadership. Without the leadership of the government of the Netherlands, of the European Commission. I think it's also worth mentioning the Council of Europe in this context. And, humbly, Ukraine. When we lead, we can solve all the problems. And let it remain so. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Kuleba. Commissioner Reynders, please.
Thank you. Good evening. I want first to thank the two Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands and Ukraine for coordinating this conference, but I want to thank the Dutch government for receiving us so well in The Hague, because in The Hague we have had the occasion to have another meeting in July 2022, on the 14th of July, and at that time we committed ourselves to establishing the necessary mechanism to restore justice and achieve accountability for the victims of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. And 2 years later, many of these mechanisms are now in place, so it's a reality, it's not just some words. Eurojust is coordinating national investigations into international crimes. 6 EU member states, Ukraine and the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, are coordinating investigations in a joint investigation team. 5 of these EU member states and Ukraine have been investigating the crime of aggression within a new international center for the prosecution of the crime of aggression against Ukraine. And discussions have continued also today on the possibility of establishing a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, with a multilateral agreement or a bilateral agreement between the Council of Europe and Ukraine. There are different possibilities, but in all those possibilities we have proposed from the EU side to use a transfer of proceedings, if it's possible, from Ukraine to the special tribunal when we will have such a tribunal. And Ukraine and its citizens who have had their human rights violated or are victims of serious violations of international humanitarian law are one step closer to reparations, because you remember that in May 2023 we took the first step towards ensuring compensation for damage suffered by this war by establishing a register of damage, and it was said today the first claims, because we have a lot of claims already, to this register were registered. And the register constitutes a first step, because now we need to go to the Claims Commission, for which many participants expressed their support today, and will continue to work on the funding of the reparation, because it's important that Russia will pay for the reparation of damage, and we are working on this with all the discussions that we have around the Russian assets, private or public assets, that we have 27 billion of euro of private assets in Europe, but also more than 208 billions of public assets. So it's quite an important discussion. The second point I want to make is that today's discussions have once again highlighted how multifaceted our support to Ukraine in respect to accountability-related effort has been. This is why last time we agreed to set up a specific group, the dialogue group, to exchange information and further coordinate our respective support measures. The major benefit of this group is that it provides us with a platform to ensure that there is no overlap between our various support measures. We had 2 discussions today in this format. I'll share the first, where we heard from Prosecutor Khan, President Amran from Eurojust, and of course Andrei Kostin, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, on the work of the ICC, Eurojust and Ukraine respectively. As much as today provide for an opportunity to take stock of progress, we all know that justice is a lengthy process. The third and last point I want to make is that most of the work is still to come. Let's be clear about that. A large number of investigations into international crimes and subsequent prosecutions will have to be handled by Ukraine. This is why the European Union is supporting the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office. The Commission has given 4 million euros to set up a new electronic case management system, and the EU advisory mission in Ukraine is also ready to help the Prosecutor's office build strong cases against perpetrators of international crimes. Ukraine is still at war, and we are acutely aware of the liquidity needs of Ukraine to finance areas of public life that most of us take for granted, from paying public wages and pensions to providing basic public services. The ability to ensure justice is also dependent on this. 2 weeks ago, we disbursed at the EU level the first 4.5 billion euro of support under the new Ukraine facility to meet Ukraine's immediate needs. This facility will eventually provide up to 50 billion euro to support Ukraine's recovery, reconstruction and path towards EU accession. We also count on the swift adoption of the recent proposals on the windfall revenues from Russian immobilized assets, which could mobilize between 2 and 3 billion euro per year and further support Ukraine in its ongoing struggle against its aggressor. So it was very concrete today, and also it was very concrete to explain what is possible to do to fight against impunity, but also to give a real support, and also I said a financial support to Ukraine in such a fight against the Russian aggression. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynders. Now you're the last.
Good evening. Why The Hague? Because the dialogue group, which was launched here in July 2022, with commitment to achieve results in our quest for justice and accountability, then followed by historic conference United for Justice in Lviv in March 2023, where dialogue group was officially launched. And within this year, The Hague became the capital of international justice for Ukraine, because here in The Hague, the ICC is working and producing the first results. First portion of arrest warrants issued in March 2023 and second in February 2024. Because The Hague became the host not only for the register of damage, but today we heard the commitment to host the full compensation mechanism. Because The Hague and Eurojust is hosting the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. So all elements of the international part of our web of comprehensive accountability are already not only based in The Hague, but at the moment are producing the results of their work. So we transferred within 1 year from commitment to real actions. And today, the launch of the opening of the register of damage for first submissions is another milestone in ensuring full and comprehensive accountability of the aggressor state. Why today, the 2nd of April? Because it's very symbolic, as these days we mark the 2nd anniversary of the liberation of the Kyiv region from the Russian occupation. 2 years ago, in the deoccupied towns of Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel, Borodyanka, we all saw the true face of so-called Russian world, which is composed of murder, torture and destruction. In our investigations, we documented over 13,000 incidents of war crimes committed by Russian military in a little more than 1 month of the occupation of the Kyiv region. 1 month, 13,000 incidents of war crimes. 2,406 civilians were killed only in Kyiv region during 1 month of occupation. 1,030 Ukrainian civilians were injured during 1 month of occupation. The aggressor committed virtually all existing types of war crimes: murder, torture, sexual violence. You will never find any war crime which was not committed in Kyiv region. Later on, we discovered similar atrocities in all the regions of Ukraine which we liberated from the enemy later on in September and November of 2022. Then we saw Russia's true intent to dismantle the Ukrainian state, to erase our nation and extinguish our identity. It's of great significance for every Ukrainian to see that our intents, voiced at the first Ukraine Accountability Conference in Kiev, are now taking shape of concrete steps and results via 4 work streams of the dialogue group. We deeply value the commitment of the dialogue group to ensure justice for Ukraine, millions of victims and survivors of this brutal war. And we greatly welcome the commitment reaffirmed in the political declaration of this conference. Today, our web of accountability for Russia's atrocities has grown with a crucial component: the register of damage opening for the submissions of the applications, and first applications already submitted. I've heard already about 200 of them. application from those who suffered from the aggressor's crimes. It's a great achievement and another result of united efforts of the free world. I think we all share the belief that true justice is timely justice. Therefore, we must do our utmost to adjust international legal mechanisms and to set up new ones so that the survivors of the war experience justice as soon as possible. These mechanisms include, but are not limited to, the tools for reparations. To restore justice, we must prosecute those who orchestrated the bloodiest war in Europe since the Second World War. For this, the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of aggression is paramount. And we must continue to intensify the work of the ICPA, International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. 16 prosecutors from 6 states are working together, building the case of the crime of aggression. First time after Second World War. It was initiative of Ukraine, and we all were involved in it, and it took us months persuading our partners to support this idea, because since Second World War, no one even tried to prosecute crime of aggression on international level. And now we have more than 40 countries who are united in the core group and preparing the legal model of it. And justice won't be complete until all of our people, both children and adults, who are in captivity of the Russian regime, freely and safely return home. We need to establish actionable international mechanisms to return our children forcibly deported by Russia and to ensure release of all civilian hostages unlawfully detained by Russian regime. We realize how complex these tasks are and how great are the challenges Ukraine and the world are facing. We are sincerely grateful to every partner supporting our quest for justice. Staying united and dedicated is key to our success. Thank you for standing with Ukraine, united for justice, united for restoring just peace in Ukraine, Europe and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor General. We have room for a few questions. Wait for the microphone and please state the medium where you work for and your name, please.
Hi there, Richard Carter from AFP. Question for Minister Slot, if I may. You talk about Netherlands being prepared to host the compensation mechanism, but with conditions. Can you explain what those conditions might be? For Minister Kuleba, what's your message for the 200 or so people that have already applied to the register? They must have high hopes of seeing some compensation. Can you give some idea of some sort of timeline for these people? That when might they actually see some concrete action? Thank you.
Minister.
Yes, one of the conditions is when you want to work with a compensation mechanism, there has to be a really good judicial framework for the different countries working together on that. So that we are going to build.
Minister Kuleba, please.
Timeline depends on the capacity to pump up the mechanism with money. I'm pretty certain that the procedures for reviewing claims will be set in place, and the office, the respective register, will be able to process them. But the question about the money should be addressed to my colleagues, probably, because there are different ways of finding financial resources for them, including through Russian frozen assets. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question up there.
My name is Lucia Schulten. I work for DW. Minister Kuleba, you just said that you saw a lot of support for the tribunal, for a special tribunal for the crime of aggression. Has the question of whether this would be a hybrid tribunal or a purely international tribunal, has this been tackled, and in which direction is this going?
The outstanding question is not about the form of the tribunal. I think we found solutions where it can be both international or hybrid, but the question at the core of the problem is overcoming immunities of Troika. And if the only way to overcome these immunities is international tribunal, then we have to support international tribunal. But it's not about, but the point is that if this we can overcome these immunities as part of the hybrid tribunal, that it can be hybrid. So the question is not about the form, it's about the substance, and this is the issue that is being currently deliberated.
Thank you. There's a question up there. Can you get the microphone?
Hi, Stephanie Vandenberg from Reuters News Agency. A question for Minister Kuleba and possibly Mr. Kostin. You said that there are the prosecutors at the ICPA are now working on the indictments for aggression. Does that mean that the question of what definition of the crime of aggression they would keep for this indictment has been solved, or is that still a point of discussion?
I think Andrei is better suited to answer this question.
Our position, of course, it's a matter of the ICPA to discuss this for the prosecutors to choose. My personal choice is, of course, the definition of the Rome Statute, which is internationally recognized and supported by more than 124 states already ratified Rome Statute. So I think for the matter of credibility, the best option is to use the definition from the Rome Statute. I think, you know, the work on which ICPA is, the team is concentrated is, first of all, the strategy for the specific investigation and prosecution. And of course, we as Ukrainian national authorities, we have a case of crime of aggression. We have this article in our criminal code, and we look at more than 600 potential perpetrators, while the special tribunals will be concentrated on the top military, political and law enforcement leadership. So it's also about the list of potential perpetrators who could be prosecuted by the special tribunal. So the work is ongoing, discussion is ongoing, but I think at the end of the day, the choice of the ICPA would be the Rome Statute. While in any case, this the final decision will be taken by the tribunal itself.
Thank you. There's a question up there that will be in Ukrainian. There.
Thank you. Мене звати Оксана Коваленко, видання Бабіль, but I will probably, if it's possible, change it to English so everyone understands. I have two questions. One is to Prosecutor General, and I can ask it in Ukrainian. Чи є перешкоди зараз у тому, щоб оголошувати російських злочинців у міжнародний розшук? So my question is about the fugitives, Russian criminals. Are there any obstacles to international to search them outside the country? And the second question is to everyone else about the both special tribunal and the compensation mechanism. They need brave and innovative approaches, especially when we talk about the immunities of Troika or state immunity, etc. Because Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council. So do you believe that European Union and G7 countries are ready for such brave and innovative approaches in the name of justice for the Ukrainians? Thank you.
May I start? Yes. So, of course, it's a crucial issue because the potential arrest and extradition and the execution of the Ukrainian, for instance, arrest warrants are crucial in order to ensure that there will be no impunity if potential alleged Russian perpetrators will leave Russian Federation and will try to travel somewhere. For that, we are in communication with Interpol. So this is not an easy communication. And there is a special procedure provided by the Interpol for such cases. We hope that our communication at the end of the day will lead to positive results, while at the same time it's critically important also to mention that we are building also the network of the countries who are going ahead with their national investigation and prosecution of war crimes committed in Ukraine. 20+ countries are having their national investigations, and we're looking forward for the applications from these national jurisdictions to the Interpol about the issuing of the red flag notices, red notices to the potential alleged Russian perpetrator. So this is not an easy work, but we are supported by our partners and friends from the other jurisdictions to try to reach to the situation when Russian alleged perpetrators will not enjoy safe havens in European states.
The other question was to Mr. Kuleba. Okay.
Well, I will start maybe with the innovative approach. We are working with an innovative approach since the beginning. I want to repeat that we have worked on 3 steps. The first one was to collect and store evidence of all crimes, also the crime of aggression. And it was possible to come out with an innovation. It's a new database in Eurojust, and we have changed the regulation on Eurojust to do that. It was the first step. The second step is the ICPA. Now we have, on the basis of joint investigation team in Eurojust, a real team to work on the crime of aggression with prosecutors and a good preparation of a legal fight to go to a tribunal. And I repeat that there is the first time that we are working not only with member states, with Ukraine, but also with the ICC and with a good collaboration with our US colleagues. And then we are working the same way for the third step, so the tribunal. And it was said by Dmytro, we want to go to a good solution. The good solution that we have put on the table sometimes is to work on an international solution, and I said before, with maybe a multilateral agreement, or there are also discussions about a possible bilateral agreement between the Council of Europe and Ukraine, and we have put forward also another innovation to work with the transfer of proceedings from Ukraine to the special tribunal. But at the end, it will be in the hand of the judge and the prosecutors to take the decisions. I want just to insist that, except Andrei, because he's a prosecutor, but on this side, you have Minister of Foreign Affairs and a Commissioner, European Commissioner for Justice. What we are doing is to provide all the tools to the prosecutors and to the judges to take the decisions, to organize prosecutions, and then a trial. It's the same for the definition of the crime of aggression. The final word will be for the special tribunal to decide about what kind of incrimination. But again, we are working, be sure, with many innovations in the way to organize the process. But we want to have a very broad support, a very broad international support, and it's the case, it was also said today.
I agree with Commissioner Reynders. In the end, the most important thing is that we ultimately arrive at the point that we have a tribunal which has sufficient financial and political support. And from the earlier steps we have taken as an international community, we have shown that we can be innovative. And I think we have to be innovative at the tribunal too.
I only want to remind everyone that the conversation on the establishment of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression started with a clear no and rejection
Sorry.
from all partners. And now, 2 years after that, we are stumbling over just one issue, a very important one. I'm not putting that into question. But so much has been reconsidered, and we've had so many conversations. And I have to give credit to those partners who, as members of the core group, and also bilaterally with us, were brainstorming this concept of the international tribunal. And let me say this: based on what on the briefings I received from the core group, I think the heart of international law globally beats at the core group, at the meetings of the core group, because this is where the most innovative and creative ideas for the development of international law are being considered. And with all my respect to the rule of law and the static nature of some legal concepts, law evolves, because the purpose of law is to solve problems that humanity faces in a fair and just way. And if the current state of international law cannot solve the problem of bringing to account permanent member of the UN Security Council, then the law must change. And all those who are telling us that we cannot do this, who were telling us in the very beginning of this process, we cannot do this because international law works different way, we said to them, go and think. And they would come back later, seeing that we are not giving in, with solutions. And the same, by the way, Didier knows, the same applies to the issue of frozen assets. It all started, no, how can you even think of it? And now we're slowly moving forward. So a lot has been achieved, but we do need a final innovative push to find a solution. And finally, one more thing, let's make it clear. The fact of aggression committed by the Russian Federation against Ukraine has been established overwhelmingly by the UN General Assembly in its resolutions, by the International Court of Justice and its order on interim measures, who demanded from Russia to cease its illegal military activities. So we're not talking today about establishing the fact again. What we are talking about is finding the way to induce Russia, to make Russia pay. And this is the real test that the international community is facing. And if conservative thinkers in the realm of international law or finances will prevail in this discussion, then it means that everyone else who wants to follow Russian footprints will do so. Because in the end it works. It's very simple. And this is the kind of conversations that we're having with partners when they do not demonstrate sufficient level of innovation in their thinking. And we appreciate that they hear us. Sometimes we wish they heard us. It took them less time to hear us, but in the end they do, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you allow, I will add, the accountability is always about deterrence. And we understand that the potential aggressors from the other parts of the world, because unfortunately the world is vulnerable not only on Ukrainian soil. These potential aggressors are looking very attentively on our collective response, because some of these potential aggressors are also not members to the Rome Statute. And some of these potential aggressors can also rely on the, can rely on the protection from the Security Council of the United Nations. So what we are creating in our case to prosecute and to punish for the crime of aggression, to deliver justice for Ukraine and Ukrainian victims and survivors of this war, is also about to deter the aggression in the other part of the world. And this is equally important as a matter of result of creation of such tribunal, because in case when civilized world will be collectively strong to prosecute, when we will create such judicial mechanism on international level, then any other potential aggressor will understand that if they will even try, then collective response will immediately include sanctions, freezing of assets, their potential confiscation, creation of tribunal for the crime of aggression, and many, many other elements of our web of accountability which are ready to be used in any other case if unfortunately such case will occur.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor General. I saw one last question in the front row, please.
Thank you. Ksenia Polska, Deutsche Welle, Ukrainian. My question is, I guess, from Mr. Kuleba, because you mentioned this topic of immunity of the top political and military leadership in Russia. Also, the president of Eurojust, in his speech, he's not here, but he mentioned that for that, reforms are needed. And you mentioned that the law has to change. Before that, at the beginning of this discussion, there was a mentioning of a general vote in the General Assembly of the UN that would strip these people of their immunity. So what are the possible solutions to this extremely difficult problem that are now on the table? Could you mention something to us? Thank you.
The first possible solution is the withdrawal of reservations on this issue by those countries who put them on the table. So there is a group of countries who say that we don't think that this troika can be stripped of immunities. They are parts of the discussion that is taking place in the core group. Another part of the core group opposes this vision, and these countries who put forward this reservation can simply withdraw it. Second, as Didier mentioned, this issue can be left to the tribunal itself. There is an international legal practice that the tribunal itself decides on the jurisdiction it possesses. And third, there is an art of drafting. So the language of the tribunal, the charter or whatever the legal founding document will be, can be formulated in a way as to address the issue of immunity in a precedent, in a way of creating a precedent that will have an ad hoc basis and will not be applicable to other similar cases. I don't want to turn the whole press conference into a legal debate. Just want to make one very simple point.
Thank you.
One simple point, if I may. Yes. If politicians want to serve justice, lawyers and bankers always find a way. This is fully applicable to, and if a different logic had been followed by international community, Nuremberg Tribunal would not take place. International Tribunal for former Yugoslavia and other tribunals set up by international community would not take place. So it all starts with the will to deliver justice. And if there is someone who believes that the atrocities committed by Russia against Ukraine, if there is someone who believes that the crime of aggression committed by Russia against Ukraine is not sufficient to find a solution to bring Russia to account for this crime, then I regret to say we are on different sides of the barricade with these countries, even though they can be extremely helpful on many other issues. But this is one of the turning moments in history, and this case deserves deserves changes in international law. And I'm saying this not as only as a foreign minister, but also as someone who dedicated 2 years of his life to researching history of international crimes when I was much younger than I am today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for attending this press conference. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.